going on, guys? It is Steven, your semi-comprehensive reviewer here, and in today's video I'm going to be reviewing the DualSense Edge wireless controller. This is the new elite version of the PlayStation 5 controller, and it is built for the pros. It has all the bells, whistles, and features you can think of, but is it worth the $200 price tag? Well, I'm going to be going over the pros, cons, and features of this controller, and I'm going to let you know if it is worth that high price. Taking the DualSense Edge out of the box, you'll see that it comes in this white and black Baby Yoda pod carrying case. All jokes aside, this is actually a very nice hard shell case with a Velcro strap in the back for a charging cable pass-through. Opening the case, we have the DualSense Edge with all of its accessories. We get 2 sets of back buttons, 2 sets of convex thumbstick replacements, a nice and long braided USB A to C charging cable, and a charging cable lock. Right off the bat, you'll notice the new design for the DualSense Edge. The buttons and the touchpad are now black, and the lines around the touchpad as well as on the grips are a little bit different as well. There's also a PlayStation icon design on the touchpad, and the triggers have a grip in a similar design as well. The black area here around the thumbsticks now has more of a glossy finish to it, and it looks nice when you first open up the box, but as soon as you start using the controller, it's going to get smudgy and fingerprinty, and honestly, I don't know why Sony changed the original matte finish on the standard DualSense controller. That was fine, it looked nice, and it didn't show fingerprints as easily as this glossy finish here. Other than that though, I love this new design. Sony did a really good job of making this controller look different and stand out while still looking like a DualSense controller. Alright, let's talk about some of the new functionality on the DualSense controller, starting with the 2 new back buttons here. We do get 2 sets of buttons we can swap between. The first is a more traditional paddle back button like you see on the Xbox Elite Series controller. And the second is this kind of unique semicircular button. I'm used to the paddle back button, but I actually preferred using the semicircle buttons. It's easy to accidentally press the paddles, and they more often than not get in the way for me. But the circle back buttons feel a lot more natural to use, and they don't get in the way as much. Now, I am kind of disappointed that we only get a single set of back buttons. The Xbox Elite controller, which a lot of people will compare this controller to, has 2 sets of back buttons. That being said, I really only needed a single set of back buttons because I mainly used them as alternates to my main buttons, but it still would have been nice to see an extra set, especially at this higher price point. Right above the back buttons, we have the trigger length switches. These are familiar and pretty self-explanatory, but if you've never used trigger length switches, they basically allow you to set the distance required to register the trigger being pushed. And we get 3 different lengths here, so up top is basically how it normally is on the controller, and the bottom is a very short trigger distance, like you see right here. Towards the front, we have 2 additional function buttons that really only serve the purpose of switching between different profiles we have set for the controller. And I do like that we have dedicated buttons for switching profiles on the controller. It makes it a lot easier than having to go through some menu and changing it that way. However, that's all these buttons do. They just allow us to switch between different custom profiles. And these are the only 2 buttons we can't change the button assignments for, meaning they're always only going to be for switching profiles. So personally, I kind of wish that you could customize what these buttons did. That can always come in a feature update later, which I hope Sony does do, because to have 2 whole buttons wasting space on the controller, I don't really like it. Right above the function buttons are our thumbsticks, and we can now swap out the tips for a different feel. We get these standard DualSense thumbsticks along with a more old-fashioned convex style, and we also get one with more length to it for more precise movement. The tips are actually on pretty firmly. I thought I had broken mine at first when I removed it, but they're just firmly on there. They're not like the Xbox controller that kind of are just on there magnetically. These are actually like snapped into place. So they feel nice and secure. They don't feel like they're coming off anytime soon. And then lastly, for new physical functionality that's been added, we can swap out the entire thumbsticks for new ones. This is great for future-proofing this controller. Of course, joystick drift has been a big issue on Switch consoles as well as on the PlayStation 5, so now if you encounter that, instead of having to get a whole new $200 Edge, all you have to do is swap out the thumbsticks. Now, a new thumbstick isn't super cheap. They do retail for around $20 on Sony's website, but $20 for a thumbstick is a lot better than having to buy an entirely new $200 controller. Along with the new hardware for the DualSense controller, there's also some new software packaged in as well. As soon as you plug your cable into the PlayStation 5, you will be prompted with a tour of your new controller, and you'll be taken right into the controller's dedicated settings menu. In here is where the Edge really shines and shows its capabilities, in my opinion. And the coolest of these capabilities is the ability to set profiles. So profiles save button assignments and other settings, so we can swap between them using the function buttons quickly, easily, and even in-game. So when you go to create a new profile, it'll give you all of these different options to customize. So first are button assignments. These obviously allow you to change what buttons do, and in here we can configure what the back buttons are assigned to. I kind of wish that you could set a button combo for each back button. As of right now, that's not possible. Stick dead zones are really cool. They basically allow you to change how sensitive the thumbsticks are, and you can change different sensitivity curves. So for example, if you want a little more accuracy, you can make the thumbstick move more slowly in-game, or if you want a faster, more quick trigger thumbstick, you can set that in here as well. Or if none of these are to your liking, you can set your own curve for your profile. Trigger dead zones are very similar. They just allow you to set where the trigger push is actually registered. And then lastly, as part of your profile, you can set the vibration intensity for the triggers and for the controller itself. One thing that really baffles me about this is that the PlayStation does not give you vibration input when you change the vibration setting, which seems like a simple thing that they probably should have implemented, in my opinion. Once you've configured everything in your profile, you can assign it to one of the 4 available slots, and then to switch between any of them, you can either press and hold the function button and it'll open up the profile menu, or you can press the associated hot button combo to immediately switch to that profile. Now, with all those bells and whistles and features, how is the DualSense Edge to actually use in-game? Well, in my experience testing this guy, it was a boatload of fun to use, and the Edge was my preferred controller to use while gaming on the PlayStation 5. Overall, the Edge has a more premium feel to it. It's not quite the same leap as going from a standard, cheap, plasticky AA-powered Xbox controller to the GigaChad Elite controller, but there is still a noticeable difference in comfort coming from the standard DualSense. My personal configuration for most games is the convex thumbsticks with semicircle back buttons programmed to L2 and X, with trigger distance set to medium, and the thumbstick sensitivity set with a more precise curve. As you can see, I changed a lot from the original DualSense, so for me this feels like a completely different controller, but a lot of the functionality and features that I used were really just icing on the cake. In my opinion, the DualSense is already one of the best gaming controllers, so these added features were just more on top of that. Now, what wasn't enjoyable was the battery life on this guy. We get pretty much the same battery life as on the standard DualSense, which is to say not great. Sony quotes 5 to 10 hours from the DualSense, but I got closer to the 5. At most, I got around maybe 7 to 8 hours out of it, so I had to charge it up pretty much every other play session I had. Luckily, we do get a nice and long cable for charging the controller, along with a cable lock, which in my opinion is the most useless thing included with the Edge. I get what they're going for here, don't get me wrong. I've yanked my charging cable out of my controller more times than I can count, but this does not solve that issue at all. In fact, it actually makes it a lot worse. It's like Sony looked at MagSafe charging on MacBooks and went, yeah, let's do that, but worse. I feel like more often than not, someone will just walk through and kick the cable and rip the controller right out of your hands with the cable lock in. But at least the cable isn't getting pulled out. Luckily, charging using the lock is completely optional, but I would have preferred it if Sony had maybe spent less time creating a cable lock and more time figuring out how to make the battery life longer. Okay, so with all that in mind, is this controller worth $200? Well, if you are a pro gamer or someone who games a lot, or someone who thinks they're going to take advantage of the additional features on this controller, then yes, it is worth $200. However, if you are a casual gamer or someone who doesn't take full advantage of the additional buttons and thumbsticks and software features, then it's really hard to sell a $200 PlayStation 5 controller. I've been trying hard not to compare this controller too much to the Xbox Elite controller, because those are two different consoles. They're not compatible. Obviously, you're not going to look at the Xbox Elite and get it for your PlayStation 5. But if you look at what you get with the Xbox Elite controller, an additional back button, a charging stand, a swappable D-pad, basically all of the same features as the Edge when it comes to customization at a $150 price tag, it seems like the Elite has the edge over the Edge. But I want to make a video comparing just these two controllers because there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to that. But looking back here, the Edge, in my opinion, is the best controller available right now on PlayStation 5. However, it comes at a steep price and with some serious flaws. Let me know if you have the DualSense Edge already or if you want to get it soon, and let me know what feature you like most on this new controller. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like down below. If you love my content, be sure to subscribe. Beyond that though, I've been Steven, your semi-comprehensive reviewer, and be sure to have a wonderful rest of your day.